For the third presentation, it's on readers and text complexity, an emerging framework for assessment, and it will be presented by Dr. Diaz, Professor Fua, and Ms. Lucasan.
Magandang araw. Good day, everyone. On behalf of the team, namely Trin Lucasan, Yayi Fua, Dina Ocampo, and yours truly, Nong Diaz, we are here to share our presentation on readers and text complexity, an emerging framework for assessment. This is the outline of our presentation. We start with a background. We move to the initiatives of the University of the Philippines Center for Integrative and Development Studies Education Research Program. Then, learnings from the TalkTogether studies. Next, the text complexity assessment tools in the Philippines, including text complexity framework of Diaz. Finally, we share our emerging text complexity assessment framework, followed by the implications and the references. So let's start now.
Good day, everyone. Allow us to provide some background first. There has been some concern on Filipino children's literacy performance over the years. Data from the Philippine National Achievement Test, or NAT, from 2013 to 2018 consistently showed Filipino learners low proficiency in literacy. And this has been recently confirmed by results of international large-scale assessments, particularly PISA and the Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics, or CPOM. The results showed that Filipino learners fall short of the minimum reading standard expected for end of primary, as defined in the SDGs, thus setting alarm bells ringing throughout the country, most especially in the education sector. Attempts at instituting reforms have been done throughout the past decades. A review of these reforms from the 1920s all the way to 2010 is outlined in the report of Bautista, Bernardo, and Ocampo in 2010. But the most massive reform in the Philippine educational system happened with the enactment of the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013, or the K-12 law. New curricular frameworks were developed by the Department of Education. For kinder to grade 3, the most significant aspect of the reform was the shift to mother tongue-based multilingual education, or MTB-MLE, mandating the use of the learner's mother tongue as medium of instruction. An evaluation study of the MTB-MLE implementation by Monje et al. Recommended that the program be continued owing to its strong learner-centered pedagogical foundation. It encourages teaching that meets children where they are by recognizing their right to learn in their own language. However, implementation needs to be strengthened by addressing various issues such as absence of teachers and learners' materials, linguistic diversity in classrooms, mismatch of identified mother tongue and the child's mother tongue, among others. To support this overarching curricular intervention, corresponding instructional interventions were put in place. One of these is the Early Language, Literacy, and Numeracy Teacher Professional Development, or ELLN-TPD, a 10-day face-to-face program aimed at enhancing pedagogical knowledge, skills, and attitudes, improving ability to assess learners, and sustaining commitment in mentoring and sharing of teaching experiences to improve instruction and outcomes. As of 2016, the program benefited 11,998 early grades teachers and 10,103 school heads. In 2017, its technology-supported counterpart, ELLN Digital, was piloted to 4,040 K-3 teachers. Learnings from these programs were discussed in Learning Action Cell sessions, which are school-based teacher professional development sessions. Interventions in the form of assessments of reading are also being used, some of which are the Philippine Information Reading Inventory, or PhilERI, assessment tool, a classroom assessment tool used to measure and describe children's reading performance, the Early Grades Reading Assessment, or EGRA, an individually administered oral assessment of foundational literacy skills of early graders, The Early Grade Math Assessment, or EGMA, assesses primary numeracy and mathematical skills. The Philippine Early Childhood Development, or ECD checklist, is a normed developmental screening tool individually administered to 3 to 5-year-old children. Expressive and receptive language are among the 7 domains being measured. Despite these interventions, issues surrounding Filipino learners' literacy continue to persist. Interventions often focus on teacher professional development. There is not enough information if books being used for instruction are correctly or appropriately leveled. There is also still a dearth of excellent and stable assessment tools that appropriately measure language and literacy abilities and performance in the different Philippine languages. Further, there is no inquiry on other possible solutions to the issues on literacy development among Filipino children, one of which is investigating the relationship between text and reading performance. As part of the University of the Philippines mandate, the Education Research Program of the UPCIDS tried to do something to improve literacy materials for children. Recently, the Language and Literacy Research strand of ERP developed the following tools. First is the Multi-Literacy Assessments for Filipino Children, or MLAF, a literacy assessment tool for kindergarten to grade 3 Filipino children with versions in Filipino and English. The other one is Sukat Wika, a psycholinguistic analyzer developed in collaboration with the Digital Signal Processing Laboratory of the UP College of Engineering. While already being used, these tools continue to go through a process of development and refinement. Our involvement with the TalkTogether project most certainly opened up new ways of thinking about the functionality of these tools. What we have learned from our work with book leveling, the generation of a child-directed corpus, the morphological analysis of words, and the age of acquisition study present exciting possibilities for the ongoing development of Sukat Wika and the MLAF. To talk more about this, I turn you over now to Train.
Thank you, Teacher Yai. The MLAF is a battery of literacy assessments covering 10 domains of literacy in Filipino and English. For its first phase, assessment tools were developed for kindergarten to grade 3. However, the pandemic halted the data collection. A smaller study in Sinugbuanong Binisaya has already been conducted using some of the tools which were administered online. Another initiative of the ERP is the development of Sukat Wika. Sukat Wika is a combination of two Filipino words, Sukat, which means measure, and Wika, which means language. So from its name, what is Sukat Wika? Sukat Wika is a tool which, as its name suggests, may be used to measure language. It is a psycholinguistic analyzer for researchers, teachers, writers, and instructional materials developers that will provide word and text level metrics which are relevant to the development of the reading materials. Version 1.0 of Sukat Wika is capable of analyzing text in 4 languages used in the Philippines: English, Filipino, Sinugbuanong Binisaya, and Ilocano. It can count word lengths, sentence lengths, paragraph lengths, phonemes used, and word frequency. It also has a word search feature wherein words with specific characters like the number of syllables or a specific string of letters in a word may be located within the document. Application for copyright is already being processed for Sukat Wika. As the AOA and corpus studies progressed, it was discovered that there were several instances where Sukat Wika would be of use. For the AOA work, the word search function of Sukat Wika helped refine the word list by locating words with the same roots. The same function was also used to identify common words in the AOA word list and existing assessments. For the corpus work, it not only also identified common roots, but was also used to list the different derivations of selected roots. For both studies, Sukat Wika determined word properties like syllable counts, phoneme counts, and frequency counts of words, enabling researchers to describe the phonological properties of text. In the Philippines, there are several other means and tools to determine text complexity. The most common is the engagement of experts to determine appropriateness of text. Two measures for readability have also been developed. The first of which is Adarna House's Filipino Text Readability Index, or FIT3. FIT3 is able to provide a readability level which was based on Adarna picture books. Makahilig also developed the readability formula which was based on content words present in a text. Both measures describe only the psycholinguistic aspects of a text. The next study we will discuss also touches on text readability, but it takes into consideration other aspects of equal importance. Take it away, Teacher Nong.
Thank you, Train. Since most research on text complexity focuses mostly on the psycholinguistic aspects of text, this framework attempted to highlight the interplay of the text and reader as a data source for the generation of just the right texts for particular levels. For my dissertation, 1,826 grades 1 to 10 students from Davao, Bacolod, and the National Capital Region participated in the study to develop a framework for the assessment of text complexity. It identified appropriately leveled texts in Filipino for grades 1 to 10 by involving experts and teachers in ranking the texts for specific grade levels. The students took comprehension tests for the narrative and expository texts. The research identified quantitative features such as number of syllables, words, and sentences, sentence length, and unique words. Qualitative analysis focused on text structure, story elements, kinds of words, sentence structure, content, and cohesion of the text. The appropriately leveled texts were analyzed to arrive at the distinct features for each level. Therefore, texts for the lower grade levels have shorter sentences and texts, simple vocabulary, fewer complex structures, minimal characters, dialogue, and setting, lesser events, and more familiar themes. Readers' comprehension ability should be included in any endeavor to determine text complexity. Findings from the AOA and corpus studies will help in the review and finalization of test items. The MLAF should be reviewed to take into account language features, stories, and texts that children have access to. Revision of words, for example, will be more informed in terms of word choice, such as inclusion and spread of words with affixes, as ERP would now be mindful of how the inclusion of specific words with specific affixes may raise the complexity of the assessment materials. The experience with TalkTogether sub-studies ushered in the realization that Sukat Pika could be used to provide information related to indicators of text complexity. Aside from its original functions, it is possible for it to evolve into a more sophisticated tool to help determine the complexity of texts. Some indicators from this text complexity assessment framework can actually already be identified by Sukat Pika. Its next iteration could include additional indicators such as parts of speech, affix and morpheme counts, lexical density, diversity and complexity for Filipino and other Philippine languages, graphical representations as output, and multiple simultaneous searches. Corpora for content, words, and figures of speech may be part of future development. With improving tools to use for assessing literacy abilities, including comprehension and the quality of texts, what could emerge is a richer model for text complexity assessment, which builds on the properties of text and readers' abilities and dispositions. The uses of this model and tools can inform the development of various literacy and educational materials for children. For example, texts can be better selected for inclusion in textbooks. The framework can also inform the construction of literacy assessments so that appropriately leveled materials are used in national tests as well as classroom assessments. Teachers could use the model and its indicators to select stories and books which may comprise their classroom libraries. Future research in text complexity may investigate the application of the model on other types of text, such as nonlinear material, poetry, and electronic web-based material. These are our references. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diaz, Teacher Siayi, and Teacher Tring. Just have one question to the text complexity group. Are there any plans in the near future, for example, to have Sukatwika versions for different languages? Is the team considering that? And if so, what languages are on the table?
One language which is currently being thought about is Waray, since one student is expressing interest to do interest using materials of that language.